Hey Simply Sippy crew. This is going to be a video regarding my favorite anime of all time, adapted from the manga written by Yoshihiro Tagashi, Yu Yu Hakusho. This will contain spoilers both from the anime and the live action because this is going to be an unbiased, at least as much as possible, comparison between the two. And as always, here's the incoming disclaimer that it will contain spoilers, so if you do not want to have any elements spoiled for either version, please close the video now. So now, as to remain unbiased as I possibly can be, let me start off with some caveats. A live action starts out at a disadvantage for many reasons. It is looking to add onto a beloved fandom that has already been instantiated, so operating under the assessment that the live action is going to have a large hill to climb, let's start with that. So comparing it to the source material, the anime had 4 seasons, and the argument could be made that it should really have only been 3 seasons, considering Tagashi really only wanted the series, or the manga in general, to have 3 major arcs. The final arc centralizing around the antagonist of Shinobu Sensui. However, regardless of this, we have to realize that the anime itself had 4 seasons in total, and that content is attempting to be put into a live action series on Netflix that is at this point 5 episodes, each at around 45 minutes to an hour's worth of time. So it brings us to our first area that the live action has to overcome, and that's establishing characters, storylines, and plot points, and trying to keep them as consistent with the source material, but advocating for expediency. And this is to allow audiences to resonate with an adapted version of the new plot so that it makes sense to them while still remaining somewhat true to the source material. So this is removing some of the other areas of measurement, such as budget, like budget between hiring actors versus hiring voice actors, the choreography, which needs to now be done in either CGI or by stunt actors versus animation, and logistics like that. I want to stay away from those points because I don't want to belabor the video because it would take a very long time. If there's interest there, please write it down in the comments and I can elaborate further. But what I really would like to discuss more in detail is what elements need to be preserved from the source material in order for both sides to be satiated. And when I say both sides, I mean avid fans of the anime versus new watchers of the live action. Because what I hope more than anything is that the live action sparks interest in the source material so that people that haven't watched the original anime or read the manga go back and have an appreciation of it so that they then can become further immersed in what I would say is my favorite anime of all time. So now let's get down to what is really transferable logistically from the source material to something like a live action. And one of the big areas that is going to be the overarching theme here is authenticity. Authenticity of the character, authenticity of the plot, and authenticity of the timeline. And some are more important, and violating some are more egregious than others. So starting off with the characters in an anime are meant to be supernatural. So it's very difficult to have them scale to a live action and have it look realistic. And that needs to be a limitation that's understood. It's come a long way. So I would say that the characters within Yu Yu Hakusho, the Netflix series, met my expectations for a majority of the characters at face value. There are some areas that make no sense to change, such as the color of Bui's hair. You already have Botan, her hair being blue, and you have Yukina, her hair being a bluish green, as it appears in the anime. But Bui, who has a very similar color palette, it does not transfer over. So small changes like that are something that I firmly believe need to be preserved. And something that if you are a validator of the screenwriting, you need to ensure that it aligns with the source material, because you are taking beloved characters and you are making sure that they will essentially become beloved by both new and previous audiences. So I would say, from a character perspective, the Netflix series at face value didn't disappoint me, from the appearance of Yusuke to Karama to Hiei. I think my two biggest disappointments were potentially in Genkai, because I thought that the actor that played, or the actress that played Genkai, should have been shorter, should have had a more haggardly look. You have to think that Genkai is a woman that has been through a lot of physical and emotional distress, and smokes, or has smoked, for decades at this point. So you would expect the actress to have a raspy voice. You would expect her to be a lot shorter and a lot more petite. Now, I'm not trying to say that we can't have a translation into, like, hey, they have to be 1-to-1. But I feel like for the most part, it was acceptable. So something like that is a surface level change that really doesn't need to be made, from an actor or actress's build to the color of their hair to a line that they say in a scene that is nearly identical to the name of an object, i.e. something like changing the Mirror of Forlorn Hope to the Mirror of Darkness for Kurama. Something like that is, I would say, more egregious than trying to consolidate arcs into a storyline or narrative that is less lengthy. I'm not saying that is the best approach, but one of the bigger cons for me that is very habitually performed throughout this live action and many live actions that try to reproduce source material is that they change lines or redact them entirely unnecessarily. So take a second. I'm going to pause my audio so you could just feel the impact of this scene with Hiei summoning the Dragon of the Darkness Flame.
I have the power to pull you into oblivion. I assume just my right arm will do. You should never have insulted the Dagon Eye. Because you see, in a way it has its own mind and loathes disrespect. Resisting it is not something I would do.
So hopefully my Plex screen was not too distracting. However, you really can feel how palpable the tension in that scene between Hiei and Zero is in this part of the Dark Tournament. And that is correct. I did say Zero. If you're starting with the Netflix live action, the Darkness Flame is used on Bui because there is no Dark Tournament, so you don't get to see kind of the advancement of Hiei when he first uses it to when he uses it towards the end of the tournament.
As a fighter, I like you best, Kurama. And when I like something, I like to take it away. It gives me a certain feeling, like pondering unanswerable questions. You don't reach the result you want, and you're swept with an empty despair that makes you feel alive.
So that scene with Karasu and Kurama is really another depiction of where changing the dialogue really does the story a great disservice. Something like that didn't need to be changed as there was enough dialogue within the Netflix live action. However, it's very intuitive as to why they would change the story of how he's able to go from Suichi to Yoko Kurama versus the original source material. Because so you have to understand that Yoko Kurama, the grade A demon, is his original form. So it begs the question, how and why would someone of that power level change into a weaker human form? So that's an origin story. Then the next part of the narrative is really, how does he change from his human form back to his Yoko Kurama form, which is a level that in the anime and the manga he can't reach initially on his own, but in the live action they make it seem as if he could change at will, and they never really go into the logistics as to how. And what I think they'll do is they'll leave it mysterious just because it would take too long to explain. And I'm of the impression that we need to be understanding of this, right? The story from the source content of the manga and anime is incredibly interesting. However, to jam pack a lot of these incredible stories that took hours and days of our lives to ingest and truncate that down into 5 hours of time is no easy feat. So there are areas where I think it is acceptable to make those changes and allow our imaginations to fill in the blanks for us, right? It's allowing us to suspend our disbelief and create that narrative ourselves, whether it be right, wrong, or otherwise. It's allowing us the creative license to fill in those gaps. And there's something to be said about that. Now, the purist side of me combats this ideology fervently. However, before getting into my final opinion of the live action, I would have to say that the only course that would make me satisfied with the deviation as a purist would be the reasonable expectation of having more episodes, having more seasons, but based on how they treated the timeline and how they combined many different arcs or redacted arcs completely, such as like the Saint Beast arc, I don't think that there is a middle ground. So my final thoughts around the comparison between the live action and the anime. It's all really coming down to timeline. If you had watched the live action prior to knowing of the existence of the anime or the manga, then I think it is an enjoyable show, and hopefully it pushes those individuals to get interested in the content to the point where they'll want to watch the anime. The reverse, I think, is probably the most prominent, where you watch the anime first and then hope for the best with the live action. And my opinion on this, as this was my experience, is that it would leave you disappointed for the very reasons that I had discussed again earlier in this video. But if you watch the live action and you got enjoyment out of it, then that's great. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because enjoyment is few and far between. I just wanted to provide some of the comparisons and potential biases that you would potentially run into between the live action and the anime. And truly, as I've noted multiple times throughout this piece, I really hope that watching the live action propels you to wanting to either read the manga or watch the anime, because for me, it is my favorite, and I think it's one of the best written comprehensive animes to dive into, and it truly holds a special piece in my heart, and I hope that it does for many of you that may be interested in the content. At this point, the video has gone on longer than intended, so without further delay, this is simply Seppi signing off, and I hope you enjoyed the video.